Welcome back, everyone. I'm Agent Strange, your host. Today, I am joined by the one and only Weapo from New Blood Interactive. Mr. Weapo,
Howdy, howdy. Thank you so much for having me.
hey, thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on. It was great seeing you at QuakeCon this year.
Yeah, man, that was a blast. It was really cool to meet you there, and also to spend some time in the legendary dome.
Yep, the legendary Gaylord Texan, as it's known. They've had it there for a couple of years now. I know it wasn't where they first started, obviously, but that's where they've been having it for the last couple of years, and it's a good spot.
Yeah, I was a fan. Very surreal space.
Yes, very big. Like that's only portion of the entire complex. There's like a water park and everything that I didn't get to see.
Yeah, same.
I think I remember you telling me when we met that was your first QuakeCon experience. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And what were your overall impressions?
I mean, it was just so wild to see everyone in that giant LAN area. I went to LAN parties, when I was growing up, but that was, five to seven friends crammed into a hot room with low end PCs, stacked up everywhere. So to see everyone's fancy machine and just the variety of games being played, that was really a trip.
And then also just getting to meet up with, obviously you're with New Blood, so meet up with your coworkers IRL, and then meet some of the other people like It Software folks, Night Dive, and so on.
Yeah, that was awesome. I'm obviously a huge New Blood fan, so I was nervous about meeting everybody, but it was also good to be like, hey, I'm me, I'm a person. I'm not just a social media gremlin, I hope.
One can only hope. So actually, speaking kind of to that point, I want to start off the interview with talking about how and when you got into content creation, kind of your story with that.
Well, I always, as I'd say when I was younger, I much more fancied myself, a creative type. So I was lucky enough to grow up with camcorders around. I always made silly little videos. And when I realized that making videos for school projects was kind of an easy way to an A,
Hmm.
at least in my hometown, if you made a decently passable video, it was people liked it. So I made a lot of videos for school projects. And then I also think a lot about this program called Batman Cartoon Creator, which was, some Windows software that allowed you to make little Batman cartoons with assets they had in the program. And that was kind of my first experience with like editing video in any way. And so I've always liked that process of stitching things together. And then from there, I went to college and I was a film minor in college, so I made some stuff there and I did some freelance work for a channel called Classic Game Room. I did some pretty embarrassing toy reviews for an offshoot channel they had called CGR Toys, and that was kind of my first attempt at making stuff for YouTube.
Awesome. Your story actually kind of mirrors my own. I had a couple of school projects that were video based that I either was like the director essentially or the lead creative on it. I did mass communications in college, which was more of the umbrella of broadcast media. So there was a film component to that, and then there was also the radio component. But that was 2010 to 2014. That was before or just before YouTube became like a viable career. So I'd love to know change since then. If there has to be colleges that have a YouTube adjacent like degree or courses or something that you can take.
Well, my film program had just changed its name to digital filmmaking, like it was around the same time. So they were kind of making that transition of, over to like, this is media with the internet in mind. But it certainly wasn't what it would be, I imagine now, and it was still pretty traditional as far as you're going to make short films. And the idea is that, most people in the program had dreams of making feature films someday.
Yeah, no, that was definitely the experience that I had with some of my classmates as well, who were, there was the half of the students who were pursuing that degree because it was very easy, and then there was the other half who took it sincerely, and I was kind of somewhere in the middle.
Right. Yeah, I often wished I had taken it as a major because it was, my minor, and I was always, I wasn't as involved as I wish I had been. It was always kind of a secondary thing for me while I was there.
Yeah, same. I'd say the same for myself. I distinctly remember there were various channels that I watched that, I've played around with YouTube for years at this point, and like a funny battlefield moments compilation was something that I tried because there was a YouTube channel by a Scottish guy named Chaboy HD who had these really funny compilations that he would make with his friend where they would throw C4 around and do all that goofy stuff.
I just have such a nostalgia for, the early era of YouTube, and videos like that, especially going back and watching some of those videos and their 480p is the max, like grainy video game footage.
Yep, grainy video, horrible audio, something that was filmed in Gmod with Fraps
Yeah,
as the
yeah.
the capture software. Was there anything uh, like any major inspirations for you that you can recall?
Yeah, when I was my first big reason to go on the internet regularly, when I was a kid, was Homestar Runner. I loved Homestar Runner cartoons growing up, and I still think about Homestar a lot. Obviously, I do very basic bad animation in some videos, just keyframe animation. But I'm always thinking about, kind of the feeling that I had watching Homestar, where it was just kind of, a warm blanket, and kind of some of the humor presented. I wouldn't say that I'm not, I'm not under any delusions that I'm funny. I'm trying to make jokes or whatever. But the jokes inside of the animation techniques there, I think about a lot. And then of course, Civi, as I've watched Civi videos over and over. I'm lucky enough to have a really bad memory, so I can watch content that I like, like once a year, cycle back through. But Civi, and the fact that I didn't realize that there were so many people out there that loved the same games that I did. Because once I left high school, I just never really met anybody who played, a lot of the games that I did growing up, and I never really sought out online communities to talk about video games. So, Civi was a revelation, and just like, oh wow, this is like, there's a lot of people over here who like this stuff, and obviously Civi's bringing in people who don't have interest in those games just because of the quality of the videos. And then finally, there's this speedrunner named Arcus. There's a summoning salt video on that includes Arcus and the Ninja Gaiden speedruns. But the thing that's incredible about Arcus to me is that, he just never gets tilted. He's just a very calm presence always, even if it's some run has failed. And that's just kind of had an impact on the way that I play and enjoy video games, and also in realizing like, oh, maybe if I can approach content creation with an understanding that sometimes people are looking to be chill, like that makes things easier for me sometimes.
Yeah. Now, I definitely understand that. I think back to that kind of 2014, 15, 16 era where there was a, I guess these were people who were in some part inspired by folks like Angry Joe or AVGN, who they had that kind of angry, anger and vitriol, whether it was sincere or not, was like part of the package. It was part of the appeal of what they did.
And I enjoy that myself sometimes, but I'm not very good at it. Like, or it doesn't ring right coming from me most of the times that I've tried it.
Because I'm gonna guess, and this is the vibe that I got meeting you, is that you are a chill person, so you can't. It doesn't come naturally to be like, oh, I'm just gonna let out a whole volley of slurs over this crappy NES game that 5 people played.
Right. Well, and also video games are like the one bright spot in the world for me a lot of times. I would say I'm actually a pretty cynical and angry person. And so part of making things for me is like if I can use it to escape those feelings, that makes it more fun for me.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I've always been, for my own personal aspirations of, for me, this has been a hobby. I'm not gonna try to make it a career like Civi or Mandalore Gaming or some of these other folks that I'm also inspired by. But just have something that's chill that you can put on in the background and stuff, and just have someone yap about something that they like.
Yeah.
There's so much. If you want to feel bad about yourself and about like the world and everything, there's no end to the amount of content out there for you.
Right.
So kind of offering the opposite of that entices me more.
I think I used to have some kind of aspirations of maybe being, you know, of having some sort of greater impact with the things I created. Um, but then again, Arcus was an example. The enrichment that I got from listening to Arcus just kind of be calm all day long. I realize that has a huge value too. And a lot of the stuff that I watch,
Mhm.
is are relaxing deep dives into video games, like watching stuff on your channel makes my night better. Just because I am wound up a lot of the time.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. No, I was thinking about that. Is that kind of the image of people who they'll hold up like a sign at a concert that says like "Your music saved my life" or something like that, because in some respects maybe it did. I think about, I can't remember who said it. He says like, "No, I didn't save your life. You saved your life. You just used me as a way to cope." Having something that's chill and calming, relaxing can just go so far in helping people recenter themselves. So I'm totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of just late to realizing that myself, It really was kind of like a turning point because I was so focused on pure artistic expression and the movies and music that I watched. I wanted kind of like visceral and deep things, and then yeah, realizing there's value and a balance there has been helpful.
Yeah, not everything has to be serious. You can be a silly little guy,
Right.
and there's value in that. But speaking of silly little guys, what I forgot to look this up. What is the Dale Gribble esque character's name?
Well, my YouTube channel is just called Weapo, and so I'm fine with that character also being named Weapo, but I've always left it open-ended because I was curious as to what people might name him,
Hmm.
And I think Truck Guy is kind of most people refer to him as Truck Guy if they do mention him in the comments. So he can be Wepo. There's certainly a lot of me in that character. Or he can be Truck Guy, or maybe someday a name will materialize. We'll see.
Yeah, truck guy works good. I like that. What was so the first joke that you see when you look at Truck Guy is obviously the hat, and it's such a perfect one-off joke that, hey, my truck is more truck than yours. Was that something that like you heard somewhere, or is that something that you came up with yourself?
Well, a lot of what do on short form videos is depressingly, it is aimed at like, what can I do to try to like cater to short attention spans and the algorithms?
Hmm.
And so when I was drawing that character, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be a great idea if I had some small text on the hat so that when people are scrolling through, it takes them a second longer to skip the video because they're gonna read that text.
Yeah.
You know, they're gonna have to squint and see like, what does that hat say? So it came from a dark place of algorithm magic. And then, I was just the hat I was thinking of, I guess, is one of those fish hats, like fish fear me.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to just copy that. So I sat around for a second and then, I'm sure someone has said something similar before. Maybe it even processed and is in my brain somewhere. But to my knowledge, I just came up with it and stuck it on the hat.
Do you own a truck?
I do not own a truck.
Oh, it's stolen valor then.
Yes, indeed. Stolen valor, except that my roommate had a Danger Ranger when we moved to Los Angeles, and we commuted to work every day in that truck. And I would like to think that I have some ownership of that truck. And I come from a place that trucks were culture.
Yeah.
That was the status symbol.
Yeah, no, I grew up in a similar environment where, not exactly the South. Like part of my family is from Texas, which I personally don't consider part of the South. Texas is Texas,
Fair.
and trucks are, they're part of the whole yeehaw gimmick. But I remember trying to remember when I first saw you because I did see you on TikTok because at least right now, YouTube used to be the place where culture happened. It's very much TikTok now. If you want to know, like, hear what's going on in popular culture at the moment, people are going to post it there first now.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
saw you talk about Dusk, and you're like, oh, hey, here's a real cool retro inspired shooter and whatnot. And then I don't know, like a month later on Twitter, I see, I don't know if it was the official New Blood account or Dave Oshry or something saying, hey, we hired this guy and he's going to help us with our marketing now. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, it's kind of a long one. I'll try to give you the condensed version best I can, but feel free to stop me if I get rambly. But I mean, it kind of starts with my obsession with New Blood. I was kind of a latecomer to New Blood because at the time Dusk came out, I was aware of it somehow. I'd heard some buzz around it. But I was working an office job where I had like my day job had kind of become a career over time. And I had a lot of responsibilities there. It was an important part of the company that I was running, basically. And so I mentioned my roommate in his truck. For a while, we would wake up and we had these twin, like these matching little boy IKEA beds that we had upgraded to from our air mattresses when we moved out. We'd wake up in those. We'd commute the 45 minutes to an hour to work. We would work until around 6, and then we would immediately leave work and go to the theater. We were doing plays, so I would be in rehearsal until 11 or midnight, and then we would drive home and do it over again. And the weekends also had play stuff in them. So I just didn't have time to play games during that period for a while.
That's too much.
It was too much. I remember part of the reason I was like, I think I'm going to stop doing this theater thing was like an actual, desire of like, video games make me really happy. I would like to play more of them again. I've been like, I was just so out of the loop on everything. So I did eventually play Dusk, and of course it was the revelation for me that everyone said that it was. I loved it. And I was also keeping tabs on Gloomwood. I didn't have Twitter at the time, so I would just kind of search Gloomwood on Google every once in a while. And it became a thing where, every New Blood game I would almost get angry at because it was so good. It just kind of frustrated me that people were making such incredible things and I wasn't. Like I had nothing. I My creative output was just completely determined by, what I was allowed to do by a director or whatever, like I I enjoyed acting. I had enjoyed playing in bands more, but I just really wanted to get out of Arkansas, and it was an acting buddy of mine that took me out to LA with him, or we went together. So I remember listening to a podcast with that Dylan Rogers was a guest on, lead developer of Gloomwood, and thinking about like, man, this guy has been working on this project for years, is just doggedly pursuing it. And it's this incredible thing that I love so much. And like what could I do if I had free time again? I wasn't under any idea that I would make something great. I just wanted to do creative things under my own power, whatever that wound up being. Um, so and at a certain point I had, some success acting. Things were kind of building. I had a very small role on like a show on HBO, and that experience, it was a tiny role. I think it was 2 episodes and maybe 4 lines, like a complete bit part. But that experience was so stressful to me that it was just like, if I start getting more work, I'm going to hate it, And like the rehearsals for the plays I'm doing are eating my whole life. So I quit doing all that. I started playing video games again. And the Fallen Aces demo, a combination of that and the Dusk Switch port, which was so much better than any Switch port I'd played, was like, okay, what is New Blood up to? Like, maybe this company does care about something more than money. And that's when I made a Twitter account, a now dead Twitter account, where I followed Dave and some of the devs. And, just kind of, I was just a big fan. And so when YouTube announced they were going to start doing shorts, the day job that I had worked with so many people who had made full-time livings on YouTube or short form content in general. And part of my job was helping them do that. That I thought, here's my chance. If I want to try to build something for myself, I got to get in on the ground floor of shorts, because I know how things can go if you've got time and you ride the opening wave of one of these platforms. So I quit my job, which is a wild thing to do. And in retrospect, I should have just been collecting a paycheck, until they fired me. But I had a misplaced sense of morality, so I didn't do that. And I just started using everything I knew to bombard YouTube with shorts to see what would happen. Because much like I didn't have much belief in like, oh, I'm a real creative person, or I have talent for this. I was just like, I know how this works. You just churn and churn, and then the algorithm will reward you. And I was making, sometimes 2-3 videos a day. And I started to see the growth curve. Like, it started to happen. And then YouTube monetization for shorts kicked in, and the numbers were so low. I mean, lower than what I expected, which I expected it to be very low. But it was low to the point where to get the many, many millions of views, even more millions than I expected a month to make any kind of money on the platform, I would have just had to make complete slop, like do the kind of things that I personally don't like at all on these platforms. And I became very depressed. I lost all steam. I started applying for jobs and regretting that I had left my job where I had health care. And every job I applied for, like on LinkedIn, I could see they had thousands of applicants for either video editing jobs or social media jobs. And I was in a bad spot. And I was binging Civi videos one night, just kind of catatonic on my couch. And I had this moment of like, do you know how many video games I've bought because they were in a Civi video? And just thinking about how important internet video is for promoting video games or getting eyeballs on video games. And I started to realize that like a lot of publishers don't have TikTok accounts. So I thought, okay, maybe I don't need to apply for jobs. Maybe I need to convince someone to give me a job.
Ah,
Like, like maybe this is the way to get a job. And maybe if I make videos about video games, that'll be enough of a through line that I can build an account. And I don't think I'll get a job related to video games, but I can use the data or the analytics from the TikTok account I make to apply for any job, to be like, hey, look at this growth curve over here. I can get eyeballs on your stuff.
yeah, just the hey, I have this experience.
Right. I'll have something to show for it, because that was also like the case for the jobs that I wanted. I did not have a body of work to show for it. I had spent 7 years in kind of a very specific and odd job related to YouTube, and initially Vine, and then eventually TikTok. And so I started making those videos. And at some point I sent a really cringy email to Dave, just being like, hey, I would love to just talk to you about, how I think a TikTok account could help promote your games, man. And I think I also sent a cringe email to, some people at Night Dive, because those were the two places where I was like, I love this body of work, and if I could get a job at one of these places, that would be incredible. That's the pipe dream. But otherwise, I'm just doing this so I can get some horrible soul-sucking job making TikToks for, I don't know, whatever. There's lots of social media positions for companies that don't really need social media.
Yeah.
So I was making those videos, and the growth curve was finally starting to happen a little bit, and then I got COVID, and it just completely knocked me out. And if you get knocked out of consistency when you're starting to get success on one of these platforms, you are punished.
Yep.
It's over. And I was in a really low place because I realized I don't have the money left to keep pursuing this, to get this curve back in shape. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like I have some construction experience, but then I'll have to not work from home and leave my little dog alone all day. Like, what am I going to do? And I've really let down my wife, who has been so supportive through this whole process. And it was the next day that Dave sent me an email that was like, I don't know, man, TikTok is for Zoomers and we're old. Which fair. And I also, like, I do have a general disdain for the short form video landscape, so I that's completely relatable to me, but I was kind of like, no, that's the point. Like, I want to show your games to the Zoomers. And so I basically was just like, just please let me make New Blood videos, and don't like send me a cease and desist for a month. Yeah, like, let me just see what I can do, because you probably won't want to hire me, but this won't hurt me. I can still use this experience, and then if it does really well, just let me talk to you about it is all that I want.
Because it's not going to hurt you either if I do this.
Right, right. As long, in the past, before that, I hadn't wanted to just focus on New Blood because I thought it would be really annoying, and also, you know, misrepresentative to be like, oh, I'm a New Blood account over here.
Misrepresentative, and then like a parasocial aspect of like, hey,
Right.
look at me. Yeah.
Yeah. Even though I was saying, please hire me, Dave, I didn't want it to be that apparent. It was like, please, I'd love to work here. So I was making those New Blood videos, and it was eventually, a truck guy dusk video that took off. And truck guy I had created months before to do a squirrel stapler video when David Szymanski's Squirrel Stapler released on Steam. And I love that game, and I remember just feeling compelled to like, I've got to play this game. I have to make a video for this game. It's important. Telling my wife, like, I don't know what it is, but I have to do this tonight. I'm going to be up all night. It's important. And at the time, he was like a character that would flip between being nice and being really mean, and that didn't really work. And then eventually, he evolved into like nice guy, and then eventually he evolved out of being kind of a little more stupid because I felt weird about doing an accent, growing up with a Southern accent, and it constantly being in media as a signifier of either really hateful views or stupidity.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure if I'm putting on this accent that like this is a likable character, you know. But anyway, I made the Dusk video, and I remember Dave getting a comment that was like, Dave tweeted about this. So I resurrected one of my older, or I guess it wasn't that old, but I got back on Twitter and, just continued to chug along making videos until eventually they made the decision to hire me, or Dave did.
Awesome. That's quite the story. That I was not expecting. I was not expecting this. Like, hey, it being one of those. I quit my job to not quite dream, but pursue this thing that I'm really passionate about, and then it ended up working out in the end. That's a really good story.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really, really lucky for a multitude of reasons. It really did feel like a dream manifesting. I was working so hard in that month or two before I got hired, and would walk around the block late at night just kind of praying to the heavens of like, oh man, it would be so cool to work for New Blood. I'll work for ramen money if I can work for New Blood. Like, please let this happen. And it also is not something I would ever recommend, right? Like, it was a bad decision to quit my job. I've spent my life making bad decisions in order to do vaguely creative things, like I'm an ad man on TikTok. That's completely like, that sounds like a miserable thing to be until it's like, oh, but it's for a company where every game I completely love. And they've genuinely made my life better. And I also, like, at the end, I was out of money. I had to, for that extra time to keep making videos, I called my parents and I was like, can you loan me some money so I can survive? Which is like obviously a huge privilege, right? Like, my privilege comes into play throughout the story, and luck, and also stupidity. Like, I'm completely disillusioned with the idea of like, chase your dreams.
Yeah.
It's dangerous out there. You gotta survive out there.
Very. No, and especially with TikTok and shorts and the kind of prevailing content creating culture, there's that hustle grind garbage that's being shoved down everyone's throat about, you got to work 80 hours a week to make your dreams come true and stuff like that, and all these lies that get pumped into people's heads
Right.
and stuff. Yeah, no, that's definitely not something that kids, if you're listening, do not do what he did. Do as I say, not as I do.
Right. And I mean, I worked very hard at my office job while I was doing other things for 7 years to have enough money to make it most of a year, to focus on doing dumb things. Um, and that's not, it's a much better thing would have been for me to realistically work hard at my day job and have, something as a hobby. And then if something cool would have happened out of that, then great.
So, how has your role changed, if at all, at New Blood? Because you're truck guy, you're taking care of TikTok, and I'm guessing YouTube Shorts and other places where they advertise. Is that all that you do, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, I mean, if you notice that am not posting shorts for a while, I don't know why anybody would, but when there are breaks in shorts, it usually means I'm working on something else, for a second, which is just like, sometimes I'll work on trailers, if I'm lucky enough to do one of those, and I do a few videos, on assignment here and there, which is, so I guess those are the ways in which it's changed is like, I'll do whatever Dave needs me to do. But for the most part, it's kind of the same. I mean, there are more games and I'm more aware of like, the schedule of, when a certain video might be better to post than at another time. But it's still, I have pretty much have creative freedom with the stupid little things that I make, which is one of the great things about New Blood in general, I guess, is that Dave is an excellent producer and his notes are always aimed at like the product, or not even the product, but the either the game or the video being better, right?
Yeah.
It's never like a money decision. Dave is one of, I guess, 2 or 3 CEOs in the world who cares about some things more than money. Like
Well, they famously say that they hate money.
right. And it is, I mean, it is surprisingly true. From being in the inside, I can say that, like New Blood makes decisions based on what's going to make the best game, not what's going to be the most profitable or whatever. So yeah, I have a lot of creative control, but I'm doing my best to promote the games. So that what I am working under is like the constraints of the algorithms and the platforms and the short attention spans and blah blah blah. So a lot of what I do is very specifically planned to work the best in those circumstances. And if I'm doing something totally weird, I'm experimenting with some specific element a lot of times to see if it works or not, to get eyeballs on things. I guess, yeah, that's just, again, I don't like these platforms, so I try to make sure that what I'm doing is a bright spot or a brighter spot inside of these platforms. And I'm making advertisements. And like advertising is not always a great force in the universe. So when I'm doing things, I'm trying to make sure they at least have some sort of creative value, right? Or that I'm working hard to present something that has some sort of value beyond just being an ad, which sometimes is misguided. Sometimes I shouldn't make a stupid MS Paint cartoon. I should just give people the information.
Maybe you can touch on this. What is the balance that you have to strike then if which I completely understand and largely agree with that the platforms are just dog doo doo. You know, how do you manage or balance working with these platforms then if it's something that on a basic level that you dislike?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I look at it as strictly as the tool that it is. In my view, the world is a better place with people enjoying New Blood games. I mean, it really, games are such an incredible escape for me, and they have such incredible artistic value. They're inspiring to me. I never have any designs to make games because I'm not smart enough to do that. Like, this stuff is all wizardry to me, and the artists working on the games, everyone at New Blood is incredible at what they do. Uh, so anyway, it's just inspiring from that sense of, again, people at the top of their game working on something. So if I genuinely think, there's a place for New Blood on TikTok, and I would also like to believe that if my video comes up in someone's feed, it's not any worse than anything else they're watching on TikTok. And that's not to say that everything on TikTok is garbage. I know there's a lot of quality stuff on TikTok. I hardly use the platforms myself. Maybe once every 3 months, I'll scroll for a while to get a sense of what's happening, but otherwise, I don't really use. I don't watch shorts. I watch long form videos.
I don't watch shorts, I watch longs.
Yes, I watch tall. I don't watch tall videos. I watch wides.
Yeah, I watch wides. So the people that you're working with are inspirational. The games that you're talking about are inspirational, and then the craft itself is inspirational, and that's what's helping you stay grounded.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I'm grounded to a degree. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, just everything in service of what they're doing. Because in my mind, if I can't justify that what I'm doing is helpful, uh, the money that New Blood pays me could be paid elsewhere, to someone that is actually making a game, which makes me sweat.
Uh-huh.
Like, so I do my best to make sure, like, hey, what I'm doing is worth it. And then, the moment that it's not, get me out of here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm I do I never want to be, a drag on a team of creative people who I respect more than myself.
No, I can immediately imagine that being something, that voice, the dark passenger, as I've heard it described, in your head, saying, "Oh man, this better pop off. This better pop off, or else."
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm also lucky in the fact that the games are good enough that they can pop off by themselves. That's the secret.
Yeah, no, it would be a different experience if you were trying to promote something like Hello Kitty Island Adventure or something like that. You don't have any, like, this is the worst thing I've ever played. I hate looking at it.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Although I'd like to give Hello Kitty Island Adventure a try.
Yeah,
Sounds fun.
that could be a live stream event. Is there, so from a person who describes themselves as a creative, and then myself, somewhat of a creative.
Yeah, I'll take somewhat creative as a moniker as well.
Okay,
I
so
like that better.
two two people who are somewhat creative. I told you I'm working on a big video that is sucking my soul because I just can't, find the time to work on it, and then when I do find the time, I just kind of get stuck.
Yeah.
I have to believe, one, you get creator's block, and that you kind of, because it's your job, you have to kind of get yourself out of it. Is there any tips or tools that you can pass on?
Yeah, well, when I look at videos that you make, it is incredible to me, like the amount of work it would take to make something that is kind of comprehensive and well scripted, and put together, and a wide, as I'll call it, a long form video.
Uh,
That is so difficult to me. One of the reasons why I like working with short form content is that there is at least, like, hey, this video can be done in 2 days tops, like 2 or 3. If I spend 3 days on a video, it better be something that I'm pretty confident is going to be very successful, right? Like, there are a couple times I've done videos that take that much time, but But for the most part, what saves me from a creative block is just I'm done with this project in a day, and it's on to the next one. A day or two, and then on to the next video. Um, so I have a lot of respect and admiration for people making the content that I watch and I gravitate toward, and I've always just kind of been amazed. If I look at the consistent output of a YouTuber who makes a video a week or a video every 2 weeks and it's of high quality, that's mind blowing to me. But the other thing that saves me is if I get too stuck. New Blood games have incredible soundtracks. So a lot of times if I am feeling like out of it, I'll go and pick a track from the soundtrack and build a video around that, which makes things easier.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, the biggest thing that I struggle with is like if I work on a trailer that takes me out of the flow of doing shorts, and it is a long runway for me to get back into the grind of like a video every day, or like 5 videos a week, is what I need to keep the algorithm humming along. And slipping back into that zone is difficult sometimes because it is a routine. And I also, if I've been working on something and I get taken away from it for a second, I become very self-conscious about that video. Like, I think that most of the things that I make are bad, but if I push them out quickly enough, I don't have time to think about it. I'm on to the next one. And the algorithm doesn't demand high quality, it demands output.
Yeah.
Like it wants more, more, more.
And you push it out because it's the cost of the investment that you put into it is so low that even if it's crap, it's going to get pushed down because of all the other stuff you have to feed into the machine and stuff. So no one's going to see the crap for what it is, and yeah, all that. Yeah, that's an aspect I haven't thought of before when it comes to shorts.
I do get more self-conscious, now that I do work for New Blood. Like I feel really bad when I push out what I consider to be a bad video, and I don't want anything to be an embarrassment to New Blood, and everyone's been so kind to let me do stupid things with the games, that it is like, sometimes I feel bad being like, well, here's what I got for today. But again, that is still in service of the grand scheme, which is, what most social media platforms are, is the one video that does well out of 20, and you don't know what it's going to be until you put out those 20.
I remember vague, tangentially related. I read John Romero's autobiography, and I remember a passage where he said, I think by the time that they made Doom, that was like the 90th game he had ever created,
Yeah.
or something along those lines. And it's like, it's that age old saying, practice makes perfect. Not everything is going to be uh, Martin Scorsese, absolute cinema.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, yeah, you're going to get some peak.
Yeah, and that's, as a person, I am incredibly inconsistent, always have been, whether it was, like a sports or anything creative. Like sometimes I'll do okay, and other times I'll be awful, which was really demoralizing doing something like theater, where it's like, oh, well, I guess 3 performances I'll be really bad. That's depressing.
Yeah.
But shorts, as evil as the model is of like you got to keep churning, it is helpful to me in that way. Like, okay, I can afford for 1 out of 5 to be better than the rest of them.
Yeah. And because, and just statistically, they can't all be good.
Yeah, yeah. Not when I'm working on them anyway.
Oh, no. Don't say that. No, I think you've done a really great job. With that in mind, I want to thank you for having you on, for being able to chat with me for a bit. The last question that I have for you, though, before you go, is, or do you have a spicy food take, opinion, or anything like
Ooh.
that? Like, do you hate pickles? Do
Oh,
you
I
hate
love pickles.
tomatoes?
I love tomatoes. Um,
Okay.
I love all those wet veggies.
Yeah.
Um, I I I used to consume a lot of, kind of Frankenfoods. I'm not a stranger to a peanut butter and pickle sandwich. But I don't know. I feel like I don't have any crazy hot takes as far as food is concerned. Nothing recently that has upset anyone anyway.
Is there a crazy combination that you've made that made people like, oh,
Yes. I remember I used to get the microwavable pancakes, like mini three a stack of three pancakes.
mhm.
I'd microwave them and then I would put pepper jack cheese in between the layers, and I called them cheesecakes. And I remember thinking those were really good. Um, so I guess that's not the weirdest thing, but pepper jack cheese and sweetened pancakes is a little strange, I guess. But it worked.
It worked, because bread and cheese is a iconic pairing. But the pepper jack is what's really getting me. I love pepper jack, but I would never think to mix. I can wrap my head around pancakes and cheese, but pepper jack. I don't know. I might have to try that. I might have to give it a shot.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, it's been 10 years since I did that probably, but I was also expecting it to be bad, and then I ate it, 100 more times. I am a big fan of some of the imitation meat products out there. And I know a lot of people, vegetarian or not, think that they are bad. I like the fake engineered meat products. So that's maybe a little bit of a hot take. Give me that fake bacon. I'll eat 30 strips of it.
I know what you're talking about. I've seen it before, and it looks like the worst thing ever. But I shouldn't judge a book by its cover. I have had imitation meat before, and I thought it's like, okay, this isn't too bad. Um, but yeah, I haven't had it since. I've had the black bean burgers, but that's just
Yeah, yeah. Hard to mess up just some beans and some veggies thrown together
yeah, yeah,
into the vague shape of a patty.
yeah. Vague shape of a patty that looks like a flattened turd.
Well, doesn't most food you put in between hamburger buns looks a little bit like that?
It's going to come out that way either way. So why bother dressing it up? I say.
Yeah. Well, what's the point of having good presentation in the food you eat?
Yeah, like those was it the Try Guys on BuzzFeed? The guy is like, hey, we had this $12,000 steak that has real gold flakes on it, something like that. Yeah, too fancy.
Perfect. Yeah, yeah. Might want to consider the state of the state of the impoverished world before you start eating those gold flake steaks all the time, I'd say.
No, if you guys ever make Dusk 2, I know because I was playing it this morning. If you can cook viscera and stuff, that could be a funny little joke they can put in. Where he pulls out a pepper shaker with gold flakes and just dusts it on.
Well, that is, if anyone out there at New Blood listens to this, that will be the where the suggestion lands, because I try to make it almost a rule that I never suggest anything, that I stay in my lane.
Yeah.
My idea being that I love the games before I was at New Blood, and I'm lucky that anyone tolerates me. So I almost never say, "Hey, what about this?"
Mhm.
Because I don't want to get kicked out for. Oh, the TikTok man's got a suggestion, does he?
Oh yeah,
But if it came from you,
Yeah.
that would make more sense.
Dave, if you're listening, I seen you make a lot of hubbub about that leaked Prey 2
Oh yeah,
build. Well, not I don't think the build is actually leaked, but footage.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you could make Prey 2, but not Prey 2 for legal reasons. That's an idea.
Yeah, do the opposite of what what is it, 2017 Prey game was.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Pray. That's what you'll call it.
Yeah, a good sequel to Faith, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time, but again, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the show. And thank you all for listening. We will see you in the next one.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me on and letting me yap. Take care.
You too.